So, can we terraform Mars in our lifetime? The question itself feels big. It sounds like something from a movie. A red planet turning blue and green, new oceans sloshing in ancient basins, people walking around outside, breathing fresh air under a Martian sky. It's a powerful dream. It's a dream of a second chance for humanity, a backup planet. But dreams and reality are two different things. And when it comes to changing an entire world, the reality is incredibly harsh. The short answer is no. We can't do it. Not in our lifetime. Not the full on Earth like Mars we imagine. That might sound disappointing, but it's the honest answer. And the reasons why are what make the whole idea so fascinating. It's not just one big problem, it's a huge stack of problems, one on top of the other. To understand it, we have to break it down. We have to look at Mars as it is now and then look at the sheer brutal scale of what it would take to change it. Right now, Mars is a frozen desert. It's incredibly cold. The average temperature is about minus 80 degrees Fahrenheit. That's colder than the coldest winter day in Antarctica. At the poles in winter, it can drop to minus 200 degrees. Nothing survives that for long. The air, what little there is the next problem. The Martian atmosphere is about 100 times thinner than Earth's. Stand on the surface of Mars, and the atmospheric pressure is so low that the water in your blood would literally boil. This is called the Armstrong limit. It's why you need a pressure suit, not just an oxygen mask. And the thin air is almost all carbon dioxide. About 96%. It's totally unbreathable for us. Then there's the radiation. Earth has a thick atmosphere and a strong global magnetic field. Together, they act as a shield. They protect us from the sun's harshest radiation and from high-energy cosmic rays coming from deep space. This Mars has neither. Its atmosphere is a wisp, and its magnetic field died billions of years ago. The surface gets blasted with radiation day and night. A human on the surface would get a lethal dose in a relatively short time. So you have three giant problems right from the start. It's freezing cold. The air is a near vacuum of poison gas. And the whole planet is soaked in deadly radiation. Fixing any one of these would be the biggest engineering project in human history. To terraform Mars, you have to fix all three. And they're all connected. Let's start with the first step. The one everyone agrees has to happen first. You have to warm the planet up. How do you warm up a whole world? The most straightforward idea is to kickstart a greenhouse effect. We're doing a pretty good job of that on Earth by accident. On Mars, we'd have to do it on purpose and on a colossal scale. The idea is to pump gases into the atmosphere that are really good at trapping heat. The Martian atmosphere is mostly carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas, but there just isn't enough of it to hold in the sun's warmth. We need more. A lot more. The good news is, there's a massive amount of frozen carbon dioxide locked up in the Martian polar ice caps, especially the southern one. There's probably even more frozen in the soil, the regolith, so the first goal is to melt that ice. To turn that solid CO2 into a gas and thicken the atmosphere. This would start a feedback loop. A little bit of warming melts some CO2 ice. That CO2 gas goes into the atmosphere, which traps a little more heat. That extra heat melts more CO2 ice, and so on. A runaway greenhouse effect, but a good one. The question is, how do you give it that first big push? One idea is orbital mirrors. Giant thin mirrors placed in orbit around Mars, they would be positioned to reflect sunlight down onto the polar ice caps. Think of a giant magnifying glass in space. We're talking about mirrors, dozens, maybe hundreds of miles across. Made of material thinner than aluminum foil. We need to build them in space, or launch thousands of rockets from Earth carrying the parts. The engineering is mind-boggling. Maintaining them, keeping them in the right orbit, protecting them from micrometeorites, it's a monumental task. But in theory, focused sunlight could start vaporizing that polar cap. Another idea is to do it from the ground. We could build factories on Mars. Big, automated factories whose only job is to pump out super greenhouse gases. We're talking about things like perfluorocarbons or PFCs. Like, these gases are thousands of times more powerful at trapping heat than carbon dioxide. The problem here is you need to build the factories first. That means landing tons of equipment. You need a huge power source, probably nuclear, and you need to mine the raw materials from the Martian soil to make the gases. It's a huge industrial operation on a planet where just surviving is hard. A third, simpler idea is to just make Mars darker. The ice caps are bright white. They reflect a lot of sunlight back into space. What if you covered them with something dark? Oh, dark dust from one of Mars's moons, Phobos. Or maybe genetically engineered dark-colored microbes that could grow on the ice. A darker surface absorbs more sunlight. More absorption means more heat. More heat means more melting. This sounds easier than orbital mirrors, but the scale is still immense. You'd have to grind up and transport billions of tons of rock, or somehow spread trillions of microbes across an area the size of a continent. Let's assume we do it. We pick a method, or a combination of them, and it works. We warm Mars by a few degrees. The CO2 ice at the poles starts to sublimate, going straight from a solid to a gas. The atmosphere starts to get thicker. This is the first big win. A thicker atmosphere would be a game changer. It starts to trap more heat, so the warming accelerates. It creates more pressure. At some point, the pressure would get high enough to pass that Armstrong limit. You might still need an oxygen mask, but you wouldn't need a full-body pressure suit anymore. That makes working on the surface much, much easier. A thicker atmosphere also provides more protection from radiation. It wouldn't be as good as Earth's, not even close, but it would be better than nothing. It would start to burn up smaller meteors too. As the planet continues to warm, something else would happen. We think there's a lot of water ice frozen in the ground, like permafrost in the Arctic. As the temperature rises above freezing, that ice would melt. Water would start to flow. For the first time in billions of years, Mars might have rivers again, lakes, maybe even small, shallow oceans in the low-lying northern plains. This is the picture people dream of: a warmer Mars, a thicker sky, liquid water on the surface. It would feel like we were halfway there. But this is where the next, even bigger problems start to show up. First, there's a debate about how much CO2 is actually available on Mars. Early estimates were very optimistic. Some recent studies, based on better data from our probes, suggest there might not be enough easily accessible carbon dioxide in the polar caps and soil to create an atmosphere thick enough to do the job. We might melt everything we can and still end up with an atmosphere that's only a few % of Earth's pressure. That would be a huge disappointment. It would give us a slightly warmer, slightly less deadly Mars, but not a habitable one. We might have to find a way to import the ingredients for an atmosphere, maybe by crashing comets rich in ammonia and methane into the planet. That's a whole other level of cosmic engineering. But let's stay optimistic. Let's say there is enough CO2. We warm the planet, thicken the air, and melt the water. We now have a world with a thick carbon dioxide atmosphere, with rivers and seas. It's still not a place we can live. The air is still unbreathable. This brings us to the next phase. The biological phase, making the air breathable. The goal is to get oxygen into the atmosphere. On Earth, that job was done by tiny microbes, cyanobacteria, over billions of years. They took in carbon dioxide, used sunlight for energy, and released oxygen as a waste product. We would need to do the same on Mars, but we'd want to do it a lot faster. The plan would be to introduce the toughest life forms from Earth first. Things that can handle cold, high radiation, and a CO2-rich environment. We'd start with lichens, mosses, and algae. We could seed them across the planet. We might even be able to genetically engineer them to be even tougher and more efficient at producing oxygen. These tiny organisms would begin the slow, painstaking work of changing the entire planet's chemistry. They would pump out oxygen, molecule by molecule. Over time, the percentage of oxygen in the atmosphere would begin to rise. As they died, they would decompose and create the first organic soil. After centuries of this, the soil might be rich enough to support more complex plants. On hardy grasses, then maybe shrubs, then eventually forests. This is the part that sounds beautiful, the greening of Mars. But the timescale is staggering. Even with the most advanced genetically modified organisms we can imagine, it would take hundreds, and more likely thousands, of years to produce enough oxygen to make the air breathable. Think about it. It took life on Earth over 2 billion years to fill the atmosphere with oxygen. We can probably speed that up, but we can't turn a 1,000-year process into a 50-year one. It's just a limitation of biology. Plants grow at a certain speed. Photosynthesis works at a certain rate. There are no shortcuts. So, just on the timescale alone, the dream of a breathable Mars in our lifetime is impossible. It's a project for our great-great-great-grandchildren to continue. It's a cathedral we could start, but would never see finished. And now we have to talk about the real deal breakers. The problems that are so fundamental, they make some scientists believe that terraforming Mars is simply impossible no matter how much time we have. The first is the missing magnetic field. The magnetosphere. Earth has one because its core is a spinning ball of molten iron, which generates a powerful magnetic field that surrounds the planet. This field deflects the solar wind, a constant stream of charged particles blowing out from the sun. Without it, the solar wind would slam directly into our upper atmosphere and slowly but surely strip it away into space. Mars used to have a magnetic field, but its core cooled and solidified billions of years ago. The field died, and that's probably a big reason why it lost its thick atmosphere and water in the first place. The solar wind just eroded it over eons. So here's the problem. Let's say we spend 1,000 years building a new thick atmosphere on Mars. What's to stop it from just being blown away again? Without a magnetic field, we'd be fighting a losing battle. We'd be pouring water into a leaky bucket. Can we make a new magnetic field for Mars? The idea has been proposed. It would involve building a giant electrical coil, a solenoid, either in orbit or on the planet itself. You'd run a massive current through it to generate an artificial magnetic field. The amount of energy required for this would be astronomical. We're talking about a power source that could run entire countries on Earth, dedicated solely to keeping the shield active. And it would have to run without fail forever. The moment it shuts down, the atmosphere starts bleeding away again. The sheer scale and energy costs make this border on science fiction. The second deal breaker is the soil. We've sent rovers and landers there, we've analyzed the dirt, and we found it's full of nasty chemicals called perchlorates. They are toxic. On Earth, they're used in things like rocket fuel and fireworks. On Mars, they're everywhere. They make the soil poisonous to most Earth life. It also makes the dust very dangerous to humans. And you wouldn't want to breathe it in or get it in your water supply. Before you could plant those lichens and grasses, you would have to clean the soil. And you'd have to process billions of tons of dirt to wash out the perchlorates. This isn't a small problem. It's a planet-wide industrial cleanup project that has to happen before you can even start the biological phase. Again, the scale of the task is hard to even comprehend. You'd need vast amounts of water, which would be a precious resource, just to flush the poison out of the ground. So, when you put it all together, the picture looks pretty bleak for a quick terraform. You need to warm the planet, which is a massive engineering challenge. You need to make sure there's enough gas to thicken the atmosphere, which is not a given. You have to introduce life and wait for thousands of years for it to make oxygen. And all the while, you have to deal with the fact that your new atmosphere is being stripped away by the solar wind, and your soil is fundamentally toxic to the life you're trying to introduce. This is why the answer to can. We do it in our lifetime has to be no. The physics, the chemistry, the biology, and the sheer engineering scale are all working against us on a level we've never faced before. We are talking about planetary science, not just engineering. We would be trying to reverse engineer a living world without the instruction manual. So, what's the alternative? Does this mean the dream of living on Mars is dead? Not at all. It just means we need to change the dream. We need to be more realistic. The future of humanity on Mars, at least for the next several centuries, is probably not going to be about terraforming the whole planet. It's going to be about something called paraterraforming. The word means Earth-like in part. Instead of changing the whole planet, you change a small piece of it. You build a bubble, a dome, a city inside a massive enclosure. Imagine a huge transparent dome covering a crater several miles wide. Inside that dome, you can have total control. You can manufacture a perfect, breathable, Earth-like atmosphere. You can maintain a comfortable temperature and pressure. You can shield the inside from radiation. You can import or create clean, rich soil and build farms, parks, and lakes. Inside the dome, it would be like a piece of Earth on Mars. You could walk around in a t-shirt. You could plant a garden. You could live a normal life. But the moment you step outside the dome, you're back on the real Mars. Cold, deadly, and unforgiving. You need your suit again. This is a much, much more achievable goal. It's still a huge challenge, but it's an engineering challenge, not a planetary science one. We know how to build large structures. We know how to create closed-loop life support systems. We've been doing it on the space station for decades. Building a city-sized one is a massive step up, but it's on a scale we can understand. We could build one dome. Then, over time, another. We could connect them with underground tunnels. Or we could slowly build a civilization on Mars, one bubble at a time. This is a vision of Mars that could absolutely begin in our lifetime. We could see the first bases established, the first habitats built, maybe even the first large-scale dome constructed. We could see the first generation of humans born on another world, living their entire lives within these manufactured Edens. From inside these domes, they could conduct a science that would tell us if full terraforming is even possible. They could experiment with Martian soil. They could test genetically engineered microbes in small, controlled greenhouses. They would be the ones to start the truly long-term projects. They could build the first PFC factories. They could begin the slow process of thickening the atmosphere, knowing it was a gift to their descendants 100 generations in the future. This is the more honest way to think about it. Terraforming isn't a single project we can choose to do. It's a process. It's a multi-generational effort that might take 1,000 years or more. And our role in our lifetime would be to take the very first step, to get there, to learn to survive, to build the first outpost that would allow future generations to even consider the bigger dream. The dream of a green Mars is powerful, but maybe the real, more inspiring dream is of human ingenuity. Of building a home in the harshest environment we've ever tried to settle. Of learning to live on another world, not by conquering it and bending it to our will overnight, but by carefully, patiently, and respectfully building our own small pockets of life there. It changes the question. The question isn't, can we terraform Mars in our lifetime? The real question is, can we become a multi-planet species in our lifetime? And the answer to that is yes. We can. The first human footsteps on Mars are within our reach. The first small habitat is a real engineering problem we can solve. The grand planet-wide transformation will have to wait. It's a task for a future humanity that is far more advanced and capable than we are today. They will be the terraformers. We will be the ones who got them there. And maybe, in the grand scheme of things, that's an even more important role to play. We are the generation that opens the door. We won't get to see the finished home, but we can lay the foundation. And that's still a pretty incredible thing to imagine.